special thanks to Kim for inviting me here today, much appreciated. Today's session is going to be about commercial distribution finance. Anybody got any ideas what commercial distribution finance actually is?
Floor plan?
Yep. Expand a bit more for the group, Kim, perhaps?
Funding of items that sit on a showroom floor. Items such as, the one that comes to mind is motor vehicles and car yards. Maybe caravans, a caravan yard, motorbikes in a motorbike shop. Where were we yesterday? Golf carts.
So you clearly have customers who use distribution finance. So is there a need for bankers to understand commercial distribution finance? Why would that be, Rob?
Oh, exactly what I mean. We don't really use it a lot, or I haven't used it, haven't looked at it even.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's good to get an
Yep.
The most obvious one would be the priority arrangements on security structures.
Excellent. Now, before I get into the content, can I ask, would you like to come and sit up front for me?
Yeah, sure.
Here's better. Thanks, Callum. You okay there?
Yep.
Right. Okay, so Wells Fargo. Has anyone heard of Wells Fargo? What do you know about Wells Fargo?
They're not in front of the Royal Commission.
They have had some challenges though, Kim. So they had challenges as soon as I joined. So Wells Fargo are the largest US bank, head office in San Francisco. They bought out the GE old business as I joined Wells Fargo. So they just bought out the commercial distribution finance portion of the business. So that's how Wells Fargo is their first entry into Australia. They are a prestigious bank. They're a bank who a lot of the Australian banks have used for their models. So the risk rating model that you guys use and Westpac use came from Wells Fargo. So back in the day, the CEO and the likes and the risk team would have gone across to Wells Fargo, tapped into their expertise and brought it back here. So that's one of the similarities I saw when I joined Wells, was the risk rating tool. Exactly the same. Got a different name, but exactly the same that Wells Fargo use and have been using it for a long, long time.
Does it work then?
Yes, it does.
Does it have a wheel that spins very slowly?
I'll talk about the risk assessment with commercial distribution finance because it's not the risk assessment that you guys will be used to, and it sort of blew my mind when I joined them. So, commercial distribution finance is specific for Wells Fargo, specific to 5 industries. So only 5 industries are involved. We deal with RV, recreational vehicle, we deal with motorsports, we deal with marine, we deal with construction, and we deal with electrical and appliances and some sort of computer type stuff. Not much, it's slightly different, so we'll just park that one for now. Industry specific competitors, the main competitors for the Wells Fargo group would be CNH. CNH is basically the agri type business, so all that kind of stuff, and Bank of Queensland. They're the 2 major competitors. Kim alluded earlier to floor plan funding in cars. Wells Fargo don't get involved in any car finance at all anymore. The closest you'll get will be a motorbike or a jet ski or something like that. So no motor vehicle. St George and Macquarie are the biggest players in floor plan for vehicles. But even those guys, St George is pulling out, will only deal with the bigger ones, bigger groups there. Macquarie is still in there, but not as much. But from a competition basis, probably from Wells Fargo, it's really Bank of Queensland. So that's sort of where that comes from.
Are they still operating in Perth, Mary?
Yeah. So from my perspective, where I'm coming from is that when I joined Wells Fargo, the team in WA was 8 people. It's now 2 people. So
Would they report directly back east?
Yeah. So and also the business has shrank considerably because when the book was purchased by Wells Fargo, very much driven by yellow goods, all that kind of stuff. Your Brian Verries of the world, if any of you remember Brian Verry, that type of client. And that's since all been exited. I actually spent 12 months working on a project which basically projected me out of the business because I was doing the closure of a lot of the old dealers and the like. So it's what it is. Had a great time, loved every moment of it. So distribution finance The controversial point I found during the business is who is the customer. So commercial distribution finance, you have two levels. You've got the distributors, or the OEMs, which is what the technical term is used in the business, which is the original equipment manufacturer, and then you've got the dealers. A big split between the business. I worked here, so I was a state manager of the dealers. I had a team of regional sales managers who ran around looking after dealers. We started off with about 340 dealers, both CBD and regionally. It's now less than 100, so hence my job was made redundant, which is fine. So what happens is Wells Fargo signs an agreement with the distributors. Right, so it's very similar to a bit of a tripartite agreement. So they sign an agreement with the distributor, and it is negotiated on the basis of interest funding terms to the dealers. So it's interest funding terms to the dealers. So the distributor signs up with, say, the likes of Polaris. So Polaris is your quad bikes and all that kind of stuff. So Polaris has an agreement with Wells Fargo whereby they fund the interest component for the dealers. So how it works is Polaris will sign an agreement with Wells Fargo, and they will say, for my dealers, I will allow you to give them interest-free terms of, say, 30, 60, or 90. Now here I would use the word there, interest-free. Dealers receive interest-free funding, depending on the terms of the agreement that the distributors signed. Highly confidential, because no two dealers are on the same agreement. So it's quite a controversial business. As you know, in any commercial business, like businesses talk to each other, but it's highly confidential how it operates. So the distributor pays the terms. The distributor will then say, okay, well, for my Polaris dealer, I will say that this Polaris dealer can have 60 interest-free terms, day brilliant terms. So that the distributor pays for that. How they pay for that is when the invoice comes through, so all the invoices are issued for the units going out to the dealers, it is paid on the terms of payment. So the distributor issues an invoice for $100, the unit goes straight through to the dealer, and he can sell it. He gets interest-free terms of 60 days. He sells that at day 59, hasn't cost him anything. Where does Wells Fargo make money? When that invoice gets issued, we only pay the distributor 80% or whatever the percentage was agreed. So that $20 is paid to Wells Fargo. Alright? So he's got interest-free terms of 60 days. We've made the money here by the terms of the payment of the invoice. Stock is delivered immediately to the dealer. So what we're actually funding as a business, we're funding the working capital here and here. We've got conflict of interest, we've got challenges around what we can actually disclose. So we can't.
Do all the dealers know what sort of rates are on? You know,
No, they're all on different agreements.
But in your experience, when they walk around and talk to each other, yeah, so
Absolutely. And they use that, obviously, they'll pull that one out. Wells Fargo do not get involved in any negotiations here at all. We would immediately refer them, no, speak to your distributor, we can't discuss the terms of your agreement. So it's quite a simple business. So that's where some of the money's made. Some other money is made here because he doesn't sell it, obviously. Not every piece of stock is going to get sold in that interest-free period. It then goes on to the floor plan. At day 61, interest kicks in. Interest kicks in on average around about between 9 and 12%, plus a monthly fee. So that's basically how the money is made. Are you okay with that, Glenn? Can you
Yeah, I
see
can see
if
that.
Ryan's good enough for you?
Yeah, he's-
Excellent. Any questions on that?
So in your old role, what were you doing, setting the limits for the floor plan? And
Yeah.
monitoring that?
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't much monitoring on your, on to 60 days.
No.
would you?
So from my business, whereas I was the state manager here, so my regional sales managers were going around seeing the dealers, increasing their facilities, putting facilities in place for that. So these have limits, still have limits, the dealers, floor plan limits, which they
Yeah,
have
so
to
that's,
work to.
that's a secondary,
Yeah.
secondary. limit.
Yeah. And the irony is, to me, the most important person in this business, to me, would be the dealers. Because they're the ones that selling the stuff that makes the money in the first place. The most important person in this business to Wells Fargo is here. I struggle with that. I'll be honest with you, I did struggle with that concept. Because I think at ANZ, the most important person is the customer. Who is the customer here? It was always a bit mixed.
So when your relationship manager goes out to the dealer and they want to increase the limit, who do they apply to? So they apply to through their distributor. How does that application occur?
No, so I will talk about the funding and the financing, which is interesting, to say the least, particularly from someone from my background. So if you're a dealer, back in the day, GE would be grabbing mortgages left, right, and centre. Probably Anthony, you've probably seen mortgages in bits and pieces around. When Wells Fargo took over, no more mortgages. We were basically releasing the mortgages on all the properties. Securities for these facilities are very, very simple. You've got to be in business for 2 years. No startups, you've got to be in business for 2 years. You have to own a property. We don't care if you get up to the Hiltonet, you've got to own a property, and you've got to be able to provide a 20% bank guarantee for them, so 20 to 30%. So in essence, you can be a new dealer in business for 2 years, geared up to the hilt with ANZ Bank on your mortgages, be able to provide a 200 grand bank guarantee. You can have a facility of $1 million, just like that. Tick, tick, tick. Very little credit assessment goes into it. Annual reviews and the like kick in round about 5 million, so nobody under 5 million gets reviewed. Here it's 15 million. Because if you look at what the debt position of these guys is, the debt position of these guys is 0, but they've got that sort of understanding that they will support the dealers should that dealer fall over. Because the agreement that they sign is a buyback arrangement. So this distributor, if this dealer goes broke, distributor has to buy back stock. But what he does, he buys it back. It just appoints another dealership. Quite very, very cutthroat business. Very, very cutthroat business, I found.
Oh, they just call it bank guarantee. They're always in front.
Yeah. So if you think of it, if you put your risk hats on now, guys. So if you think about risk, what key things would Wells Fargo be looking at from a dealer? What's the most important thing for a dealer to do? What would a good operator be doing if he's a dealer?
Selling.
Turning over. So the key metrics that you look at here is your stock turn rate, your ability to not have any aged stock. They're the two key things.
Is that why some dealers, like sometimes they, at the end of the month, they push certain volume of cars because of this?
Yeah. When always bear in mind who is the customer here. I'll talk about BRP shortly. So BRP is a really good case in point. So I'll just get you a little bit better understanding of the actual business. So there is no security. The security is the bank guarantee, obviously. The security that Wells Fargo then holds is actually the stock. So all the facilities, the repayment terms on the facilities are pay as sold. So they're all pay as sold. And that's a term that's used within commercial distribution finance. So if you sell a unit, so all stock is referred to as units. If you sell a unit today, your requirement under your contract is that you pay it out today. So Kim, you sell a jet ski today. Your admin lady is on leave, you've gone off to lunch, the salesman sold the stock item, it has to be paid out today, so it has to go to the system and paid out through online banking. That's not able to happen because of whatever reason. So that means you have sold an item that's held on trust. All security units are held on trust by Wells Fargo, so you've sold an item on trust. So the other big issue with business is what we call SOTs, which is sold on trust, where the dealer keeps the cash, tight cash flow times, as you can imagine, in the last couple of years, doesn't pay it out until the stock gets checked. So that's a segue into how we control the stock. So Wells Fargo has a bunch of guys called stock checkers who run around and every month physically count the stock at every dealership to make sure that it's all there. If it's been sold, it's being paid out. So the stock checker guys, WF2, they cover the whole of Western Australia. So they run around and check the stock. They physically turn on engines, they physically climb on vehicles, check the VIN numbers. I've been out with them, it's actually a really fun job because you're just out all day just running around. But the irony is with Wells Fargo is one client, one time, in GE days back in the day, wouldn't help the stock checker go up and get boxes. Their contract says you have to make your stock accessible so the stock checkers can go out and physically look at the stock. This one dealer didn't do that. He had a pile of boxes, which was outboard engines, I think it was, or something. The stock checker couldn't get up to check them, so he just took the serial numbers off the boxes. It later turned out that the boxes were all empty. So the whole business is driven around that one fraudulent activity, which was, I think, probably 10 or 15. Everyone keeps referring to it back in the day. So there's a high level of mistrust from the, I'll set up is high level of mistrust from the stock checkers. You know, so unlike Anthony, who'll give you the benefit of the doubt in QA and talk you through, he's such a lovely person.
That was a long time ago.
The stock checkers, that's it. You don't get any second chances. So what happens if you ever get recorded with an SOT, which it can be a technical SOT. My accounts lady was out today. I paid it tomorrow, or online banking finished for the day, I paid it the next day. Your account is immediately put on hold if you have an SOT, and you cannot transact. So very much black and white, cut and dry business around the stock takers. Any questions to that point? I'll give you a story of that. So when I joined the business, few of you who've been around will probably know the business anyway. I've been in the business about 2 or 3 months, and there was a company, a very large company, who sold forklifts out in Canterbury or somewhere, or Cunard or somewhere. And struggling, I went out to see him, as you would do, you know, got his story, had a chat, worked out that, you know, he was struggling. He was turning over about 20-25 million at the time. And I had a conversation with him, as you would, okay, so things aren't looking too flash, you're a bit behind, you know, let's talk about some sort of repayment arrangement, some sort of deal that we can work through, got all the financials in, he was getting audited by Ernst Young, and everything was fine. He was going through a rough patch. I took that back to the business with just as you would do as a banker, present a proposal, here it is, this is the issues, this is what he's doing about it, this is what I propose to do, so he will clear X amount in 3 months, X amount in 6 months, and then we're free and dry. Head of risk at the time was an American lady, and large character, I'm not sure who's the toughest credit guy we've ever had, or you've ever had in ANZ, would you say?
Not real pussycats here.
You know, say like
Neither are proper grammar.
someone like Frank Horowitz, who like 10 times worse, hard as nails, absolutely hard as nails, this woman. And no, Mary, we don't do repayment arrangements. Go out there and tell him take this notification, tell him we're going to close him down. No, banker, never done that in my life before. I went out to the business, I sat there, and I'd already called the bailiffs, Pickles were coming in. I sat there all day. with the accounts lady watching the forklifts go on a truck and be loaded out of business. So it was like I was in tears almost, just purely because we could have worked this connection out, but no. Commercial distribution finance is number one priority: get your stock out, get your stock back. So, case in point. But it was interesting. It was good learning for me and made me understand the risk. But assessing risk in the business, I say, is nothing like you guys assess risk. Nothing at all. So, only assess the risk of what's in front of you. No understanding of the entire customer. So, for example, a trading business who, like a lot of trading businesses, have 47 investment properties on the side. Wells Fargo don't care about that. No interest whatsoever. Purely look at the stock turn rate, the aging of the stock, how long the business do their own property. Very, very different. Very, very different. Questions at that point?
Do you have many customers where there was a banking arrangement as well?
Yeah, this is a good point. I think I've mentioned this to Lee previously. What I find going around seeing the clients is there are very, very good businesses. Obviously, very little risk outside the commercial distribution plan. So setting small business. So in the last 4 years, we've done 4 bank guarantee swaps as the Wells Fargo entity has changed. It was owned in the US, it became owned as here. It was then a different bank guarantee. So we've gone to the various banks, and every time we've needed a bank guarantee swap with ANZ, it's starting a small business. These are companies turning over 15, 20 plus million. Yeah. Great one around here, Premier Avon. I don't know if you've ever noticed that business, great business, bank with Westpac in there. Own that property. A lot of them own the properties, so a lot of them own the commercial properties. Own the property, more than 40% or 50% is leased to Alpha Barbagallo. Massive rental income on that. Debt leverage is, I think last time I looked, was about 30%. So the commercial property is funded by NAB. The trading business, the turning over, it was a startup. They're now turning over 10 plus within 2 years. Great product. And
So how did the
trading
guys,
accounts with NAB.
how did the guys get into that?
Well, Rob Weston, who is the patriarch of the family, he was in the car game. Yeah, so a lot of them have a link to that car game.
Yeah, I understand.
But,
Floor plan.
I mean, the caravan dealers, I know back in the day we wouldn't go anywhere near caravan parks and all that. Great businesses, some absolutely great businesses. The Jayco out on Albany Highway, biggest Jayco dealer nationally. So, we don't often have that in WA, and we have the biggest dealer here, but they are the biggest dealer nationally.
Really interesting too. I think his son's a dream.
All right, so now maybe I'll just talk about, just so you can apply it to an actual customer. I've got the benefit of the customer because I knew more of the customer because I was, obviously was one of my customers when I was here. So anyone work on RS 780?
Come on down.
All right, so Nigel Joyce, yeah, you all know Nigel Joyce? So Nigel Joyce is he's got 2 dealerships. So he's got Savage Suzuki and he's got Sea-Doo Sports and Leisure. He's also got, to my knowledge, I can only talk back when I met him back then, lots of property interests. Yeah. The primary focus of the ANZ file back when I was here was the property, trying to make the property work because of the investments that he was doing. I don't know if that's still the case, it's fairly relevant. So I went out, so Nigel, probably one of the largest Wells Fargo clients in the state. So I went out to meet him, obviously walked in, he kind of forgot I wasn't ANZ. Because obviously he'd always dealt with me at ANZ and been to the footy with me and all that kind of stuff. So I walked in and he sort of still spoke to me like I worked for ANZ. So it was halfway through the conversation I'm saying, Nigel, probably you shouldn't be telling us that because, I'm not ANZ, I'm Wells Fargo now. So As I said previously, Wells Fargo focus on business, don't really look at anything else. So the Wells Fargo assessment is purely on Savage Suzuki and Sea-Doo Sports and Leisure. Whereas from I know when the file came across from Tony Scully, very little mention of business in the file. So, still in case I don't know, very little, no interest at all. So the business is split in two. Savage Suzuki runs out of commercial property owned by the family trust, and Sea-Doo Sports and Leisure runs out of a rented property that's been heavily subsidised by the distributor. So Nigel's got a limit, or had a limit. I don't work for Wells Fargo now, so there's no disclosure here. He had a limit of about 7 or 8 million, I think, with us, something like that. So I went out to see him, had a chat. One thing I didn't mention earlier is back in the GE days, all the facilities after the interest-free period expired with interest only, there was never any principal payments required. Principal payments in a commercial distribution sense are called curtailments or security deposits. So there wasn't any. So there was potential for lots of aged stock, lots of units to be out there on terms potentially 10, 15 plus a year. All facilities get paid out in 3 to 5 years within Wells Fargo. So I went out to see Nigel. His biggest concern was the introduction of curtailments. Suzuki programs had already introduced curtailments or repayment arrangements. Now, when you're turning over 7 or 8 million, and you've got about 4 or 5 up on a floor plan, and you needed the facility to be paid out over somewhere between 3 and 5 years, that's big repayments. It's a big impact on cash flow. So Nigel was very, very concerned around how he was going to meet these curtailment payments. Similarly with BRP program, which is his jet skis, BRP are the biggest client that Wells Fargo is trying to pick up. The reason they bought the business in the first place was the relationship that GE had with BRP. BRP is a Canadian company, absolutely huge, huge company. So that was the reason for the purchase. So BRP, everything that BRP wants, BRP gets. So BRP at the end of each quarter, to your point earlier, Rob, load the dealers up with stock. They get access to all the limits of the dealers. They see there's any space on any of the floor plans, they whack in stock. Absolutely overload them. So BRP overload all their dealers. There's 2 dealers of jet skis in Western Australia. That's Sea-Doo and Fridays out in Port Kennedy. They load them up with stock. They also load them up with quite old stock that they can't sell. If you're going to go and buy a jet ski, you're going to want something that's top of the range, top of the market. You don't want something that's 4 or 5 years old because they're quite flexible and they do actually upgrade them a lot. So what BRP do is they load the dealers up with stock, then they can't sell the stock. They have a buyback arrangement, which we talked about earlier through the distributorship, so they have to buy back the stock. What BRP do is they will buy back the stock, but they won't give you cash. What they do is they credit you to your spare parts account. So for those of you with that sort of risk happening in your mind at the moment, you're thinking cash flow. So Nigel at that point had a massive cash flow problem because he was suddenly facing big repayments. He was then facing stock that he'd actually purchased sitting on his floor plan, but he wasn't able to get the cash back for it when the distributor bought it back. He got credit to his spare parts account. Credit to spare parts accounts takes a long time to reverse into cash. This is very much a cash business. We talk about cash all the time. So that to me was a big opening and a big insight for me. I've never ever considered that on a floor plan funding, how it works. So that was one thing. The second thing which I found interesting as a former banker is how accountants treat floor plans. There's no consistency. Some are on balance sheet, some are off balance sheet. So it blows out the actual financials that you're presented. The reason the account is treated off balance sheet is because all the assets are in trust. They're actually in trust and owned by Wells Fargo, so they're off balance sheet from that perspective. So there's some good questions to ask clients around. So, and also I've seen where the debt is on, but the asset isn't. That happens a lot. So I obviously that blows all your ratios out. Okay, so any questions to that point? So you all guns on commercial distribution finance?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd be interested, I don't know, Cheryl, if you have the answer or not, but were we aware of that cash flow issue that Nigel was having in his business at the time?
I think for a bit, yes. Yes, so that's when we did like the overdraft and stuff for
Okay.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a period of time, yes.
Did you understand it related to the Katama program that was introduced by BRP?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Not at that point in
Yeah.
time, no.
Yeah. So likewise, I've obviously known all about Nigel's investment business. But I had a Wells Fargo colleague next to me. Wells Fargo didn't know anything about that. And at the time I just said, Nigel, I think that's enough now. Because he was talking to me like he was a banker. And I think if Wells Fargo knew about his other interests, which are huge, that's a project risk case. He's deemed a very good client. He doesn't provide a bank guarantee for that reason, so he doesn't. But yeah. But he was very difficult to deal with because he read his contract. Hence I was dragged out with the manager saying, Mary, you've got to come, I can't answer this question. So, okay, but that's all I've got really to cover today. But happy to field any questions now or later or whatever if you're interested. I will send out just a bit of a drop point note on what I've presented today for you, so you can actually have a read of that yourself. Callum, you would just jump on whatever you need to do on that. I do have one thing, if I could, from all of you. I do have a feedback sheet which I'd like you to complete for me. It'll also be good for your CPD points if you've got that to as your confirmation of attendance. So thank you very much for your attendance, questions, and enjoy morning tea. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.